Mardi Gras dawned over Louisiana with a clash of colors and sounds. A celebration unlike any other. Masked faces danced in the streets, voices rose above trumpet calls, and laughter seemed to echo endlessly beneath the heavy, swollen sky. Yet beneath this gaiety lay a silence, thick and tightly wound, like iron bars hidden beneath silk drapes. Mary, a figure blurred into the edges of this festivity, bore this silence like an ever-tightening chain, her hands steady but burdened under the weight of a past seared into flesh and memory. The aroma of frying fatty pork and spiced molasses bread clung to the humid air, seeping through the cracked kitchen shutters of the plantation house, where Mary worked in the shadows, her heart a cauldron of simmering, unspoken rage. Within the grand plantation estate, the clatter of porcelain and the distant peal of bells marked a world of wealth and cruelty, where silk gowns and fine linens draped the oppressors in their self-made nobility. Mary's eyes, dark and restless, caught a sudden, unguarded moment in a mirror smudged with the residue of flour and sweat. The reflection was fractured, the woman staring back a map of scars, both visible and invisible, that spoke of a life shackled by relentless toil and quiet defiance. The kitchen's low wooden beams groaned softly, as if whispering confidences to the boiling pot of oil, which hissed its own warnings in a voice only Mary truly understood. What horrors could a single searing act exact upon a world so brutal? What lines once crossed would ripple beyond the hearth and into eternity? The mistress, a figure as sharp and cold as the iron chains that hung in the servants' quarters, held her smiles like a weapon, a mask carved from entitlement and disdain. She roamed the halls with children in tow, their laughter, fragile and bright, struck in discord with the shadowed gravity of Mary's thoughts. To the world, they were symbols of innocence. To Mary, they were bitter reminders of a cruel inheritance she could never escape. The early morning light, prickling through iron-laced window panes, painted their faces with a deceptive hope. One Mary knew all too well might soon burst into flames. Would any act of vengeance restore what was stolen, or simply twist pain into another, darker form? The simmering promise of revolution lay silent, like ashes waiting for a breath to ignite. Mary's movements were learned and precise, a dance shaped by necessity under the watchful eyes of overseers and plantation laws that claimed dominion over every inch of her body. Her fingers trailed along worn wooden tables, her breath steady but shallow, each pulse a quiet hymn of resilience. The air inside the kitchen was thick with the scent of rendered lard and the sharp tang of copper pots, punctuated by the occasional creak of the hearth's ancient iron grate. Amidst this, her mind wandered to the countless nights spent beneath the stars, tracing impossible dreams upon fields tilled with spilled blood and sweat. Would this Mardi Gras, a festival of masks and celebrations, become the moment when all hidden fury boiled over, forever altering the fragile balance between captive and captor? Around her, the estate stirred with preparations, lanterns hanging from twisted iron hooks, silken beads strung between trees, heavy with damp moss, all conspiring to erect a stage for illusion and escape. Yet Mary's gaze remained fixed on the smallest details, a cracked ladle stained with charred oil, the faded knot of a rope discarded by the back door, the last shards of winter's frost clinging to the window's edge. Each object whispered a story of endurance, of a spirit battered but unbroken. As rumors of unrest flickered like fragile flames beyond the levee, Mary's silence became a slow, gathering storm. What justice lay in breaking silence with a violent blaze, and what price might be paid for a freedom forged in fire? In this quiet dawn, masked by celebration's roar, the slow thrum of a reckoning began to pulse beneath the surface. Mary's eyes, sharp and unresolved, caught a flicker of flame reflected in the oil-stained walls, an omen of both destruction and deliverance. The feast would not endure untouched. Beneath the painted faces and tossed confetti, an ancient grief stirred, poised to consume all in its merciless wake. Would the night's revels cloak the truth, or would the fire Mary carried burn too fiercely to be ignored? The boiling oil whispered its dark promise, awaiting the moment when fury and fate would boil together into legend. Mardi Gras in 1856 was no ordinary day. It was a crossroads where whispered tensions met the masked pageantry of old and new worlds. That year, 6 men from Mobile, drawn by ambition and secrecy, founded the mystic cruelty of Comus in New Orleans, changing the holiday into an elaborate spectacle with rolling floats, marching bands, and lavish masked balls. The city's streets, draped in beads and flooded with music, became stages for a grand social dance where tradition intertwined with the shifting tides of power and identity. Yet beneath the shimmering surface of silk and sequins lay a fragile social order, balanced on the edge of rupture. The plantation Mary called home waited beyond the celebratory streets, a world apart shaped by ancient laws etched in the ledger books of slave codes and overseer reports. The scent of burning tallow mixed with the humid Louisiana air, drifting through the cracked shutters and curling around moss-covered oak branches. The kitchen, its wooden table scarred by decades of toil, stood silent but for the bubbling pots and the scrape of a spoon against iron. Here Mary prepared the meals that nourished the household, while her own spirit simmered beneath the weight of abuses endured. Would this day, swelled with mockery and spectacle, mask a deeper reckoning? Could festivity and fury coexist in the same breath? The season itself breathed tension. Mardi Gras was both an escape and a reminder. While the city celebrated with the clang of brass and crackle of bonfires, the plantation was bound by unyielding discipline. The cracked whip remained a ghostly presence, even as children's laughter echoed faintly in the distance. Mary's hands, calloused and precise, moved methodically through the morning rituals, but her gaze flickered often toward the horizon, where revelry and ruin seemed poised to collide. Would the coming hours fracture the brittle calm? Could one woman's fury sway the deadly balance of power hidden deep within the sugarcane and cypress shade? As dawn rippled through the fog-laden fields, the plantation's creaking timbers and iron hinges seemed to hold their breath. The weight of centuries pressed down upon the earth, mixing with smoke scents from distant kitchens and the moist decay of fallen leaves. Mary's eyes narrowed, reflecting a heart forged under relentless oppression, flickering with the potential of fire, a transformation that could consume or liberate. What stories, unwritten and unspoken, lay concealed beneath the glittering masks and pounding drums? Would the impending act shatter the silence, or simply add another layer to the deepening shadows beneath Louisiana's burning Mardi Gras sun? The year was 1856, a turning point etched forever in the legend and shadow of New Orleans' Mardi Gras. In the glittering heart of the French Quarter, 21 businessmen convened in secret, their intentions cloaked beneath layers of masked formality and whispered privilege. From the flicker of gas lamps and the swish of silken cloaks, they forged the mystic cruelty of Comus, the city's first cruelty to orchestrate a formal parade, a procession that would forever change the face of Mardi Gras. This was no mere revelry, it was a declaration of identity, power, and control, wielded with the trappings of spectacle. The streets that once echoed with the wild, unruly celebrations of centuries past now hummed with calculated grandeur. Floats draped in exotic fabrics and laden with theatrical marvels rolled along cobblestones worn smooth by decades of feet and horse hooves. Bands marched, beating steady rhythms into the humid air, while luminescent flambeaux painted flickering shadows against ancient brick and wrought iron balconies. It was a time when tradition grappled with transformation, and the very nature of celebration bore the weight of shifting social orders in a city divided by race, class, and history. But this world of color and sound was a fragile veneer stretched thin across deeper truths. The plantation beyond the parade's reach remained a place where laws, harsh, unyielding, and merciless, governed every breath. Slave codes dictated punishment with cold precision, overseers upheld brutal discipline, and beneath the joyful noise, a heaviness clung like sweat to skin. In this crucible, Mary worked, the enslaved cook whose hands fashioned the very dishes served to the white revelers. Her every measured movement was laced with restraint and a quiet, smoldering fury born of countless indignities. Would the pageantry of Comus overshadow the storm gathering in the kitchen's shadows? The division between the extravagant parades and the harsh realities of the plantation was tangible. While city roads overflowed with laughter and revelers tossing beads, Mary's world was a narrow room dimly lit by a single flickering lamp, perpetually infused with the scent of grease and burnt sugar. Her gaze, sharp beneath lowered lids, flickered with memories of whip cracks mingling with the distant drums of celebration. Was this a day marked for indulgence or retribution? Could the gleaming floats and their fevered crowds ever glimpse the truth of the fires quietly building just beyond their spectacle? Mardi Gras, for all its secrets and magic, was a stage where old conflicts played out beneath new masks. The mystic cruelty's creation marked not just the rise of organized parade culture, but the inscription of American dominance over Creole tradition, blending and clashing identities beneath the carnival's gleam. It was within this tangled embrace of history and power that Mary's story unfolded, her silent rage a mirror to the city's own fractured soul. As the drums of the procession echoed faintly, the simmering promise of wrath and justice grew, a fire waiting for its moment to burn free. In the waning days of 1856, 6 young men from Mobile, Alabama, ambitious and cloaked in secrecy, assembled beneath the dim glow of oil lamps in a crowded drugstore on New Orleans' uptown edge. These men, predominantly Protestant Anglo-Americans, amid a city still deeply fractured by race, class, and culture, conceived the mystic cruelty of Comus. The name, borrowed from John Milton's Masque Comus, invoked magic, misrule, and revelry, setting the tone for a transformation that would endure for centuries. Comus was to be more than a parade. It was a ritualized assertion of identity and power, crafted within a strict circle of wealth and privilege. Before Comus, Mardi Gras was an irregular festival, largely confined to the Catholic Creole community, the vibrant heart of old New Orleans. Parades were informal, lacking cohesion, and often spontaneous, yet the establishment of Comus marked a decisive shift. It formalized carnival with thematic tableaux, masked balls, and the iconic flambeau, the torchbearers whose flickering flames lent a romantic, mysterious air to the night processions. These illuminated walks through narrow streets soon became spectacles for the city's wealthy elite and curious onlookers alike, drawing thousands to a celebration where spectacle masked stark social divisions. This cruelty was fiercely private, its membership jealously guarded. Invitations were rare and coveted, securing entry into an elite enclave where aristocrats, bankers, merchants, and influential planters wove their power into every float and costume. The themes often intertwined classical mythology with sharp political satire, reflecting the social tensions of Reconstruction and the lingering scars of war. Accounts suggest that as early as 1873, the cruelty's parades carried pointed messages, featuring costumes mocking post-war Northern figures and evolutionist theories, subtle yet potent symbols of resistance masquerading as festivity. Yet, the indulgence of Comus stood stark against the plantation's unforgiving reality. While the city's streets danced with revelers draped in beads and finery, the enslaved labored just beyond, bound by laws as rigid as iron chains. Mary lived in this shadow, the kitchen's constant heat, the whisper of lashes, the knowing glance exchanged in silence. Underneath the glittering masks and the lilting rhythms of parade bands, a profound tension simmered like the hot oil Mary tended, a tension waiting to spill. Would the splendor of Comus obscure the harsh reckoning quietly assembling within the estate? Or would the fire behind Mary's calm surface soon ripple outward, unseen but unstoppable? The lore of Comus endures, a complex weave of tradition, exclusivity, and power, overshadowed by its origins and associations with white supremacy and social control. The crew withdrew from public parades in the late 20th century, rather than conform to desegregation mandates, embodying the persistent divides lurking beneath Mardi Gras' joyful veneer. In Mary's world, these divides were not abstract, but immediate and unyielding, shaping every breath and every calculated movement. Her silent fury echoed the unspoken dissent of countless others, poised to flicker into an act that would shatter more than just a celebration. It would ignite a legacy of both terror and remembrance. Mardi Gras, then, was no mere carnival. It was a stage of collision between worlds, between revelry and restraint, tradition and disruption, masking and revelation. The mystic cruelty of Comus, with its shadowed ceremonies and dazzling displays, embodied this fraught dance. And in the quiet confinement of her kitchen, Mary's restrained rage mirrored the city's fractured soul, a fire waiting for the night to kindle it into something irrevocable. Before the roar of parades and the blaze of flambeaux, there was the quiet conspiratorial gathering of 6 men inside a crowded drugstore on a brisk December evening in 1856. These men, transplanted sons of Mobile, Alabama, well-dressed, church-going Protestants, harbored ambitions that transcended mere festivity. They sought to tame Mardi Gras, to elevate it from the raucous, informal Catholic celebrations of old New Orleans into a spectacle of refined power and exclusivity. Naming their society the mystic cruelty of Comus, they borrowed from John Milton's 1634 masque, Comus, an invocation of revelry tinged with illusion and misrule, setting the stage for a transformation both grand and shadowed. This cruelty was born into a city in flux, New Orleans perched precariously between its French Catholic Creole heritage and a new American order shaped by Protestant Anglo elites. Where the city's original Mardi Gras embraced wildness and local tradition, Comus introduced a coded grandeur, steeped in classical illusions and thematic parades called tableaux. The secret society jealously guarded its membership, bank presidents, merchants, and lumber barons who met behind closed doors, their identities hidden behind masks, during the festivities but palpable in every calculated step of their influence. The city's festive streets became a theatrical battleground for social ascendancy and control. The inaugural parade, lit by the flickering glow of torchbearers, known as flambeaux, was an intoxicating blend of mystery and command. Floats, embellished with draperies and symbolic sculptures, rolled down cobbled streets as brass bands summoned revelers into hypnotic rhythm. But this celebration of light and sound masked a stark reality. The city was sharply divided by race and class, a line so firmly drawn it cut through every corner of daily life. While the elite masked their exclusivity in glitter and grandeur, the backs of enslaved cooks like Mary bore the true cost of that spectacle. Would the fire that illuminated Comus's magic also reveal the smoke of rebellion hidden beneath the surface? The cruelty's themes grew ever bolder, reflecting political tensions. By 1873, the famed Missing Links Parade satirized Reconstruction politics, caricaturing figures like Ulysses S. Grant and mocking the social upheavals that Reconstruction represented for white elites. These processions were not mere entertainment, but blunt instruments of social commentary and resistance, dressed in papier-mâché and myth. The gleam of Mardi Gras masked a broader effort to assert white supremacy, emboldened even by associations with groups like the White League. Yet these pageants, with their gleaming surfaces and whispered threats, coexisted uneasily with the silent fury kindled behind closed plantation doors. Behind the festivities, Mary labored. The kitchen, cracked pots, heavy iron ladles, and glowing hearth, was both refuge and prison. The rhythmic clatter of utensils echoed the heartbeat of a world trapped between light and shadow. Each dish she prepared carried the taste of forced servitude, each moment of silence between orders a pause, heavy with the unspoken. The heat of the stove rivaled the heat in Mary's own resolve, a pooled fire, ready to spark. How long could the simmering rage be contained beneath the surface of celebration? Was it inevitable then that the feast set before the fire would end in a reckoning, both terrible and necessary? The mystic cruelty of Comus, born in the waning days of 1856, was a curious alchemy of secrecy, spectacle, and social ambition. 6 young men, all Protestant Anglo-American businessmen, hailing from Mobile, Alabama, gathered in the dim confines of Dr. Pope's drugstore, plotting to sequester Mardi Gras beneath a new mantle of order and exclusivity. Their vision was striking: to transform the rowdy, untamed Catholic Creole celebrations into a procession rich with classical allusions, esoteric themes, and a carefully guarded social hierarchy. They borrowed the name from John Milton's masque, Comus, the lord of misrule and revelry, establishing a secret society that blended mysticism with the modern desire for control. The men cloaked themselves in anonymity, their identities a sacred secret, preserved by ritual and mask. Membership was invitation only, restricted to the city's wealthiest and most influential aristocrats, bankers, planters, cotton, and lumber merchants who wielded power behind the curtains of silk and smoke. The cruise parades introduced the spectacle of illuminated flambeaux, thematic tableau floats, and elaborate masked balls that dazzled the city, drawing thousands of spectators even in their earliest iterations. The ritual transformed Mardi Gras from chaotic celebration to a choreographed display of social order and cultural dominance. Yet beneath this vivid pageantry lay currents darker than the shadows cast by the dancing torchlight. The Comus crew emerged at a moment when racial and class boundaries in New Orleans were fiercely contested, the city grappling with the bitter legacies of the antebellum South and the fractures of Reconstruction. The themes of Comus soon became sharply political, using satire and symbolism to assert white supremacy and mock the shifting power of Reconstruction-era reforms. The infamous 1873 Missing Links Parade directly lampooned African Americans and Northern carpetbaggers, draping its political message in grotesque costumes and biting allegory. Mary, the enslaved cook who toiled in the kitchen's oppressive heat, knew none of these parades as celebration. Her world lay beyond the masks and laughter, in the simmering pot's restless hiss and the sharp tang of burnt oil. The same hands that ladled food for the revelers carried a weight of brutal endurance and smoldering fury. What promises silently born waited beneath the gleaming floats and glittering beads. Might the fire that danced in the flambeau's flames mirror the fires kindling deep within hidden quarters, the fires of vengeance, justice, and reckoning cloaked beneath the Mardi Gras celebrations. Before the glittering spectacle of Mardi Gras could swell to its modern grandeur, the mystic crew of Comus built its secret foundation in the chill of late 1856. 6 men, young but resolute, met in the cramped confines of Dr. Pope's drugstore on New Orleans' uptown edge. These men were transplanted Protestants from Mobile, Alabama, their stock rising with the antebellum South's capitalist ambitions. Naming their circle the mystic crew of Comus, they invoked the spirit of John Milton's 1634 Masque, a lord of revelry, misrule, and enchantment, to cast new shadows over the city's centuries-old carnival traditions. This crew was born out of a desire to impose order on chaotic festivity, to transform Mardi Gras from a scattered Creole Catholic celebration into a disciplined, masked procession of theatrics and social assertion. Membership was a closely guarded secret, invitation only, reserved for bankers, merchants, planters, all men who exerted economic and political power behind the veil of mask and costume. The earliest Comus parades introduced stunning tableau floats, thematic processions, and the iconic flambeau torchbearers, whose flickering flames cast haunting, flickering chandeliers against the ancient brick walls of the quarter. This pageantry was dazzling, but it served also as a veiled affirmation of social hierarchy and exclusion. Comus was more than a spectacle. It was a statement. Over the following decades, its parades became platforms of political satire and cultural dominance, often laced with sharp critiques of Reconstruction-era reforms and the shifting racial landscape. The infamous 1873 Missing Links Parade mocked African Americans and Northern carpetbaggers with grotesque costumes, illustrating the crew's role in upholding white supremacy. Membership and parade themes reflected elite resistance cloaked in allegory, a coded language wielded behind the celebration's facade. The private balls, secret meetings, and rituals of Comus formed a parallel world, an aristocracy insulated and invisible amid the city's bustling streets. Invitations to the crew's lavish Mardi Gras balls were prized beyond measure, guarded as sacred objects as much as tokens of privilege. The crew would maintain its discreet power well into the 20th century, even choosing withdrawal over racial integration following 1991's anti-discrimination ordinance. Thus, the mystic crew of Comus wove itself firmly into the fabric of New Orleans's complex history, a dazzling, secretive emblem of celebration shadowed by exclusion. Yet, just beyond the glow of flambeaux and behind the elegant masks, the plantation world where Mary toiled remained rigid and brutal, bound by laws that knew no mercy. Her life unfolded in the kitchen's heat and smell of simmering grease, beneath the weight of silence and forced submission. The stark contrast between Comus's grandeur and Mary's daily reality framed the profound contradictions of Mardi Gras itself, a festival of masks and music concealing a landscape ruled by pain and the quiet, simmering flames of resistance. For more than a century, the mystic crew of Comus held an unbroken reign over Mardi Gras night parades, sealing its place as the oldest and most secretive crew in New Orleans. Its parades, beginning officially in 1857, closed the carnival season with a measured elegance, shielded from the wild spectacle of the earlier celebrations. The floats and themes were deeply symbolic, often drawn from ancient mythologies, classical literature and allegories, resonating with the members' adherence to tradition and elite refinement. Where other crews might celebrate with exuberant abundance, Comus wove narratives of arcane symbolism and careful exclusivity. The crew's influence extended beyond parades into elaborate masked balls, where membership was prized and fiercely guarded. Invitations were treasured objects, not just for access, but as tokens of social status. Tales survive of women who formed flying wedges to force entry into these exclusive events, or individuals who attempted to bribe or steal invitations. The balls were known for their blend of opulence and secrecy, underscored by the ceremonial meeting of the courts, a ritual where Rex, the king of carnival, formally visited Comus, symbolically acknowledging its primacy in the carnival hierarchy. This tradition, which began in 1882, continues to mark the close of Mardi Gras each year. Despite their storied role, the crew's history is not without controversy. From 1856 through 1991, the Comus Parade was a perennial highlight, halted only for the wars that shadowed America's darkest hours: the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and Korean War. Yet the crew's public presence ended in 1991, following a New Orleans City Council ordinance requiring social organizations to certify non-discrimination policies on race, religion, gender, disability, and sexual orientation to obtain parade permits. Choosing exclusion over integration, Comus, alongside historic crews Momus and Proteus, ceased public parading activity, retreating into the private sphere. Although court rulings later protected social groups' rights to free association, Comus has not resumed public parades. Today, the mystic crew of Comus still holds its famed tableau ball, preserving tradition with an air of mystery and exclusivity. Members continue to guard their identities zealously, maintaining rituals and ceremonies away from the public eye. Invitations remain coveted artifacts for collectors, emblematic not only of prestige, but of a long, secret lineage. This persistence of tradition highlights a complex legacy, celebrated as the pioneer of New Orleans' carnival grandeur, yet shadowed by its embrace of exclusionary practices. For Mary and many others who lived beyond the glittering masks and gilded halls, Comus was less a celebration than a symbol of a rigid and fractured society, one whose pageantry belied the simmering tensions beneath the surface. The mystic crew of Comus, founded in 1856, remains the oldest extant Mardi Gras crew in New Orleans, its legacy steeped in both grandeur and secrecy. Though the crew paraded annually every Mardi Gras evening from 1857 to 1991, with interruptions mainly during wars, it ceased public parading after the city's 1991 ordinance mandated non-discrimination policies for parade permits. Choosing exclusivity over integration, Comus withdrew from public festivities rather than change its membership rules, isolating itself from the vibrant, evolving carnival culture surrounding it. Despite retiring from parades, the crew continues to hold its famed and highly exclusive tableau balls, where invitations remain prized symbols of social prestige and tradition. These balls are steeped in ritual and mystery, honoring long-standing customs preserved within a tightly guarded elite. an iconic tradition instituted by Comus. The meeting of the courts sees Rex, the king of carnival, formally visiting the Comus throne during Mardi Gras season, symbolically placing Comus at the apex of the carnival hierarchy. This ritual continues to this day, underscoring Comus's enduring influence and prestige within the carnival society. The Comus parades once closed the Mardi Gras season with measured elegance, their themes drawn from ancient lore, mythology, and allegory, offering symbolic narratives far more restrained than the larger, exuberant floats of newer crews. Their procession was deliberately poetic, a final meditation of carnival that contrasted sharply with the raucousness that preceded it. Where end-of-day revelries might swirl with exuberance, Comus notably waded in mysticism and calculated grandeur, a reflection of its founding members' desire to assert societal control through spectacle. Today, the crew's members maintain their anonymity and continue to uphold traditions with zealous privacy. Invitations to their ball are treasured collectibles, emblematic of a lineage that intertwines social exclusivity with centuries-old ritual. The crew's reluctance to publicly parade since 1991 situates it as a symbol of both the preservation of tradition and the tensions of social progress, an enduring emblem of a complex and divided city. To many, Comus is at once a creator of festal magic and a reminder of the social hierarchies that shaped the very world Mary inhabited, one where celebration and suppression were bound tightly in the same mask. The mystic cruelty of Comus, born in 1856, is the oldest surviving Mardi Gras cruelty in New Orleans and was the longest-running parade organization, maintaining annual parades from 1857 until 1991, with only interruptions during wars and other significant events. The official public facade for many years was the Pickwick Club, a social organization closely linked with the cruelty's secret activities. While early Mardi Gras celebrations were largely informal and rooted in Catholic Creole tradition, Comus formalized these festivities into elaborate, thematic parades and masked balls that eventually redefined Mardi Gras culture. Comus's parades were the final procession on Mardi Gras night, characterized by torchlit processions featuring flambeau carriers, thematic floats drawn from classical mythology, and allegorical tableaux. These parades were restrained and symbolic, contrasting with the more exuberant celebrations of younger crews. The crew's members were an exclusive circle of the city's elite, whose identities and activities beyond the parade remained closely guarded secrets. Stories tell of the lengths to which people went to gain access, women forming flying wedges to force entrance, others attempting to bribe or steal invitations. One enduring tradition established by Comus is the meeting of the courts, beginning in 1882, when Rex, the king of carnival, and his queen pay formal visit to Comus's masked ball, symbolically closing the Mardi Gras season. Though Rex is nominally king of carnival, this ceremony is seen by some as placing Comus as the more prestigious crew within the social hierarchy. In 1991, facing a city ordinance requiring public certification of non-discrimination for parade permits, Comus, Momus, and Proteus chose to cease parading rather than open membership to groups outside their existing demographic. While court rulings later struck down the ordinance as unconstitutional, Comus has not resumed public parades since. Today, it continues to hold its exclusive tableau balls in private, guarding decades-old rituals and maintaining its reputation for mystique and exclusivity, making it a symbol both of Mardi Gras' celebrated heritage and the enduring social divides sheathed beneath the festival's glittering surface. The mystic cruelty of Comus stands today as a private and enigmatic guardian of New Orleans' Mardi Gras tradition, balancing centuries-old ritual with modern scrutiny. Founded in 1856, Comus is the oldest continuously existing carnival cruelty in the city, though it ceased public parading in 1991, following the city's ordinance requiring crews to certify non-discrimination in their membership. Choosing to preserve exclusivity, Comus withdrew from the public parade circuit, but has maintained its deeply secretive tableau balls and rituals, drawing an elite membership that jealously protects its identity. The crew's tableau balls remain highly exclusive social events, celebrated for their opulence, strict codes of secrecy, and intimate atmospheres. Invitations to these balls are prized collectibles, artifacts of a history steeped in mystique. The Cruve continues the ritual, meeting of the courts, a symbolic ceremony begun in 1882, wherein Rex, the king of carnival, formally visits the Comus throne during Mardi Gras season. This rare public intersection underscores Comus's enduring influence and prestige within the broader Mardi Gras hierarchy, despite its reticence to parade. In 2025, the Cruwe maintains its reputation both as a touchstone of carnival history and as a contentious emblem of social exclusivity. Though its public role has dramatically diminished, Comus remains a potent symbol of Mardi Gras' layered cultural heritage, at once a celebration of theatricality, social power, and tradition entwined with complex legacies of exclusion. For those like Mary, who lived outside its privileged veil, Comus embodied not festivity, but the stark inequalities and simmering resentments that defined Louisiana's fraught antebellum society.